there is a saying that behind every successful man is a woman. I mentioned about this saying or quote because in regards with the racing pigeon sport, it is necessary to provide a significant amount of time and effort so that the pigeons will have the proper care and training that they need to become a successful racing pigeons. And it is very important that our family members and even our spouse especially to support us in regards with this kind of hobby or sport. And today, we will have the opportunity to talk about the importance of couple and family members supporting each other to become a successful racing pigeon fanciers. Well, thank you so much, Mrs. Phyllis Jones and Mr. Joey Jones for letting me have this kind of topic. It's very important topic that we will discuss today in regards with the racing pigeon sport. Well, before I had a conversation and a one-on-one interview with Mr. Joey Jones in regards with how you started in regards with the pigeon, right? With with your father being in the military U.S. Army, and we thank him for his service. And then his job used to train messenger pigeons for the soldiers in the battlefield. And then Joey Jones inherited that hobby, right? And then Kevin Jones is the third generation. When you met Joey before, were you aware that he's already in this type of hobby, pigeon racing?
It didn't take long to figure out that he was, had the hobby of pigeons. In fact, quite often we would go to shipping before we could go out on our date on a Friday or a Saturday evening.
Okay.
So yeah, it didn't take very long to find that out. We met in our freshman year in high school.
Okay, you were a high school sweetheart.
Yes, we were high school sweethearts.
Okay, freshman, and then you are already aware about the pigeons.
It didn't take long after a few dates. We got to talking and found out that he had pigeons, which was quite natural for me to be involved with any kind of animals, being that I was born and raised on a ranch, so I was around animals all my life.
But were you surprised also knowing that there's a such thing about pigeon racing?
I had heard of it. Every once in a while we would have a pigeon that would land on one of our barns, and my dad was aware of it because he was in the military. He was in the Army Air Corps, as they called it back in World War II. And so he was very aware of the pigeons being used during wartime.
Okay,
and
as a messenger pigeons.
And so whenever we would have a bird just land on one of our barns or one of the outbuildings, and he would say, just leave it alone, it's just resting up, it'll go ahead and go on.
So your father knows those are not barn pigeons?
He knew, yes.
Yeah.
He was, like I said, he was aware of the sport because of his involvement, being in the military during World War II.
That's nice.
He never was involved with them. He was, in the Air Force, as they call it now. Like I said, it was called Army Air Corps at that time.
When I was talking to you over the phone regarding your experience about this hobby, racing pigeon, you mentioned something, a really funny and nice story about the JS prom and then
junior senior prom.
Junior senior prom.
Well, I think it was our senior year.
Senior year.
Joey's parents had to go out of town, and there was a 500-mile race, and back in those days there were no electronic clocks.
Where was this done?
In New Braunfels.
In New Braunfels.
Yes. And so we had to stay at his parents' house in our formal attire until it was dark. Do you remember did a bird come home?
No,
there wasn't.
That was the bad part. We didn't get a day bird.
So we didn't get a day bird.
You've been waiting there and then...
In a full tux and a full formal gown. And she was just shaking her head like, oh, what am I getting into?
You married your childhood sweetheart.
High school sweetheart, yes.
High school sweetheart, I should say. And well, it stick onto you the memory of that's my last junior senior prom, and it's all about the pigeon.
It was fine. I did want to get to the prom, but I understood that, with his parents being away, that he needed to be there to clock the birds because it was important to them.
So when did Joey propose to you to get married? Was it memorable, or was it has a pigeon flying and everything?
No, it was,
Don't tell me he's not romantic about it.
It was kind of, the joke always was that he got tired of driving the, 18 miles from his house one way to come pick me up. So the joke always was that he may as well get married, that he couldn't quit driving all the way up to Canyon Lake from New Braunfels to pick me up, to turn around and go back to New Braunfels.
But when you said yes to him, you are aware that he's into this type of hobby, right?
Yes.
So like in my introduction, it is very important that our spouse or family members are supportive to be successful. Joey, were you kind of worried or scared that Phyllis might not be supportive with you about this hobby?
No.
So you know that you can motivate her.
Well, she'd been around them when we were dating. She knew that I was involved, and I never give her really a second thought. I just kind of, like I said, when we were first married, I was flying at my dad's house.
Okay.
And we were living right over about a block away from here. And one day she just said, "Well, when are you going to build a pigeon loft?"
Your dad said that?
No, I
Phyllis
did.
said that.
I did.
And I said, "Really?" And she goes, "Yeah, don't you want a pigeon loft up here?" And I said, "Yep." So that week we had lumber on site, and my dad and I and her were building the loft.
So you were so excited hearing that coming from her.
Yes, I was.
When you said yes to Joey, you know that what you are getting into, right?
Yes.
So you already prepared yourself being involved as well to this pigeon.
Well, it was, if you can't beat them, join them kind of.
Yeah.
You may as well just go ahead and join them. And that's when I had asked him for a young bird team. We got married November of '77, so young birds was just over. And so I started, I became a member of the club and started flying in the fall of '78.
Okay.
With a team of 14 and ended up with 12.
Nice. So that was your first year of the race.
Of racing, yes.
Nice. So what are the important or significant events that you enjoyed doing? I know it's been a while, but what are the significant events that you still remember during your first year being involved in this type of hobby or sport with Joey? The training, the club meetings.
Even though I had been around the pigeons, there was still a learning curve. I learned real early on that very first season that you don't get too attached to a young bird flyer.
Yes. Because
I had one that I pretty much made a pet out of, and it broke my heart when it didn't come home.
Yes.
So it was kind of a lesson to, if they're still on the fly team, don't make them your pet, because there's that possibility.
And you even named that pigeon?
I did. It was Sweetheart.
Okay. I think that's one of I heard about this, Joey. I don't know if you do the same thing. Somebody told me that he doesn't name the pigeon in the race team. He only names the one in the stock.
The breeders.
Because he doesn't want to get attached with that bird, and then it will be donated to the hawks.
There you go.
So I think that's what happened to you, right, Phyllis?
Well, I don't know that it was a hawk, but it just didn't come home from a training toss.
And it broke your heart.
It broke my heart. So.
And after that, you learned that for the race team, don't be emotionally attached with it.
Pretty much, you just you know, even when you try not to, there's still some that just kind of have a personality of their own that they kind of stand out, and you kind of get attached to some of them anyway. But you know, I just try to not get overly attached to them when they're still flying.
That is right. Well, Joey, were you so thankful when you realized that Phyllis is also getting into the sport?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I'd work till almost dark, and she worked for the school, so she was home by 4 o'clock. I'd get home maybe an hour behind her sometime, or you know, dark, but and she'd be circling the pigeons.
Okay.
Which wouldn't have got training if she, you know, out there circling them. But and then she used to time herself.
Okay.
When they hit the house, they never landed on the loft. They hit on the house. They were real close together, and then they would fly over. She timed herself to see how fast she could get them from the house in, all of them in. And I mean, she was cranking with that pole. She had them going good. But she, I think, wants to tell you a story about a bird named Loner.
No. Yeah, it was, I think, 1982. She was a fraternity bird. In those days, you bought a band, you know, a fraternity band.
Yeah.
So from out of the nest, you know, it already had designated that it was going to be a fraternity bird. And we named her Loner because she never wanted to fly with the bunch. If we took them a mile, she'd beat the bunch home by 30 seconds or a minute, whatever, and just kept on and kept on. The further out we'd go, the more of the span of her beating the rest of the team home. And the day of the fraternity, it was getting really close to dark and not much time left to be able to catch, you know, a day bird. And all of a sudden we came in low and just barely popped over the top of the back of the loft, and she was the only day bird in the entire club. Not just our only day bird. She was the only
entire club. That's not combined yet, right? That was just for the club.
That was for the fraternity.
That's for the fraternity.
Yeah.
That's why the name is Loner.
She was called Loner because of that.
So it became kind of natural for you to learn the sport, right? Because you said your involvement with around with animals, you know, chicken, cattle, horses, and everything with the ranch, but never with the pigeons. And also you mentioned that your dad was also in the military, knowing about the messenger pigeons. So moving forward, when you have your kids, right? You already with Joey and enjoying the hobby and everything. Were you suspected that your kids will get involved also with this hobby?
We never really pushed them, but they, when they were really young, if they were really fussy, and I'm talking like 6 months, 5-6 months old, if they were fussy, Joey would go out into the loft and bring a crate into the house with a bird or two in it, and they'd, you know, start trying to play with it through the top of the crate, and in fact, I have some pictures of the kids, you know, doing that, and it would get them to quit being so fussy over, you know, whatever, you know, the reason was. So they both were, I mean, Kevin was handling birds at 3 years old, 4 years old. I mean, knew how to hold them, and you know, his little hands, he kind of struggled with some of the bigger cocks, you know, but you know, he knew exactly how to hold them, and when we'd go down to the clubhouse, he was probably 5 or 6 years old.
A little old. 6 or 7.
Maybe 6 or 7. He'd carry birds after they got the counter mark on them to the trailer.
They always kept him at a lower tier, so because he was short, you know, so small,
so he's
not putting him up high, but everybody knew it. And a lot of the old timers, like Herbie, who was in his late 80s
and 90s.
He just thought he was the cutest thing. He said, he can handle my birds all the time.
So it became natural with your kids, especially Kevin.
I've got pictures
Yeah.
of Kevin. I think Phyllis sent you one of Kevin
Not yet.
in the loft in a diaper.
Wow.
I mean, he's a little bitty guy, and I'd let him run. You know, you can't fuss at him. Just let him go.
Yeah.
You know,
And then our daughter became involved with the pigeons as well. But when she got older, she took a different route and hasn't really stayed super involved. But yet she knows how to take care of them. And like if we go someplace, she'll.
Partly she still have that knowledge because in her younger years she's so involved about it.
And when they were 8, 9, 10, 11, whatever years old, they both had their own race team. That's when I kind of stepped back, and I didn't fly, but the kids flew and Joey flew, and because whatever would have to divide the team up 4 ways, it was hard enough 3 ways, but to divide it up 4 ways would have been pretty difficult. So I kind of stepped back, and they had their team, a small team, and then Joey had a team also. And then they would race to each other to give the birds came
Kevin and Paula, right?
Yes, to get to that clock, because we had the clock at one location, and they had to get their countermark into the clock, and they would.
That's how
race.
competitive they were. So Paula and Kevin has their own.
Yes, they
at
both
different
had their,
times. Because at one time I remember all of Kerrville, all of New Braunfels, all of San Antone finally got together and said we're going to fly a federation.
Oh, nice.
There's over 1,000 pigeons.
Wow.
And I don't remember Kevin flying, but Paula flew, and she had a little silver hen called Miss Paula. She won 2 combines,
Nice.
2 federations.
Federation,
Over
not combined,
1,000
but
pigeons.
federation.
Federation.
Wow.
And it was over both of them were over 1,000 birds with the same pigeons.
And that is not digital.
no.
Not again.
Back in those days, it was
Crank that clock.
Right. Do you still have those old clocks with you?
Yep.
That is nice.
I kept a couple. Phyllis and I kept a couple of them, just old time's sake.
That is so nice. So, how did you balance this is a good question. How did you balance the family life and pigeons? So, was it hard, or is it got easy? It went easy for you?
You made arrangements. You adapted. That's the word.
I like that term.
I know that Kevin and I, we were trying to clock pigeons, and Paula had a baseball game down here, a softball game, and we watched. We got in the truck, we drove, and I said, Paula's up to bat. So we stopped, watched her hit, and then we raced home. We had 2 pigeons sitting out, and we clocked them, and we won the race that much. I mean, they must have just got here ahead of us, but then we clocked them, and we went back and watched the ball game. I mean, you make things happen. Every family does.
Correct.
Some people have. They raise show dogs. Some people have show calves, and you adapt your family to it. And that's kind of what we did. We were big into baseball and softball.
Yes.
So I don't say the pigeons took a back seat, but we sure pushed the baseball and the softball really hard.
And now Phyllis is so involved that you even teach, some club members regarding the computer, right? When it becomes digital. What clock are you using? Is that
a Benzing M3.
Okay. So
And we use the M3 because you can have more than one fancier in an M3, where the M1 is only one fancier.
Okay.
So we went with an M3 so that Joey and I can both fly our separate teams if we decide we want to do that.
And I believe Benzing is through our friend Ed Minville of Generate, Louisiana, right?
Yes.
So how did you adapt, like from, what do you call this, from the old clock and then to the new clock? Can you tell us something about the transition?
Well, we went from the old hand crank to the whole club went to Taurus clocks, and Joey came along to the digital age kicking and screaming and saying I'll never have one, and I said I went out and bought the Taurus. It was a used Taurus from a club member in Austin, and he saw how it was beneficial to have that.
But
And-
for Joey, I'm sorry to cut you, but for Joey, it's a challenge. And this is when you step in as a support.
Right. I'm more the technical person, between the two of us. Kevin's very technical as well, but so-
Aside from the clock, you also learn how to track the breeding program.
I developed a spreadsheet that, or created, I guess I should say, a spreadsheet that works well for us. For four pair per sheet, front and back, two on each side, and different little things that I do to make it easy to find a bird.
Like every pair has a number.
Okay.
Like pair number 1, number 2, so far. And then in the front, it has the number 1, and then the cock's number and the hen's number, so that you can find them. Plus, on the back of that, it has every band in numerical order with that pair behind it. So if you want to see who number 200 was, you go look up 200.
You can track
pair
it
6. You go to pair 6 and you see who the parents are, if you don't already know.
That's nice.
You know, and she developed that all by herself, and I love her for it. It makes life easy
So she is the one who developed that format.
for us. Yep.
So what is the most challenging situation in regards with being a housewife or a family member and a pigeon, fancier? What's the challenging part, and that you managed to overcome and managed to develop a system to become a successful racing pigeon fancier?
Well, I wasn't a housewife, and I retired from my, as I used to always say, my real job last May in 24.
See, that's even more challenging because you were working
I was working
and taking care of the family.
so I didn't really have time to help out with the training. Joey had to do the training during the week. I could train on weekends. I could come home and let birds out, but to circle here at the house in the evenings. But as far as hauling them up the road, when they got to that point, it was pretty much on Joey's shoulders to take care of that. But we just, I guess because we have done this for 48 years.
Well, congratulations for being married for 48 years.
Thank you.
And getting stronger and stronger.
But it's just second nature. So sometimes it's like, well, I need to go do this, so you're going to have to do it, or I can't do it because I have to go do something, so you'll have to do it. So we just kind of, like on the training or trying to get them out, or different things like that. Sometimes I have a hobby of baking pretty much, so sometimes I get very involved with that, and Joey will go, "You didn't go out and feed or water the birds."
But you're not
It's like,
baking pigeon pie, right?
No.
You know that, right? That the old in medieval time they have that pigeon pie. And I was like,
No pigeon
is
pie.
there a really thing like a pigeon pie? And then I search it, and it's really a thing. So why pigeon racing is special for you?
Well, it's something that we can do it together. Like I said, if you can't beat them, join them.
That
There's
kind of
so
mentality
many-
overcame as time passed by, right?
Yes.
And now how it became important to you then?
Just to have something that we had in common.
Okay, which is important.
Yeah, I mean, so many people don't have anything in common, and they grow apart.
Yes.
And so I like I said, divorce is not an option in my family or his
Which
family.
I love that statement from you.
We just, every marriage has its ups and downs, but you just fight through it, and
Correct.
it's not a 50-50. it's, sometimes it's 70, 30.
I really think that the pigeons keeps us closer together. I wouldn't say brought us together, but but keeps us going strong because we have so much in common with them. I mean, like this past year in Old Birds, we raced with Austin, and she had her team and I had mine, and she beat the crud out of me.
Nice.
She had 2 seconds on the combine. I think one was a 150 and the other was a 400. She did really well. But she's had great success flying birds on her own. I mean, with her own teams. Here recently, I'm not going to say disclose the price, but she purchased her own a pretty expensive little pigeon.
Okay.
It was for sale on Best Pigeon.
Okay.
And it's hers. So she kind of lets Kevin do the breeding, making it up and stuff. And I mean, we got her in, and we take real good care of watching them when they come in quarantine. And like Phyllis said a while ago, you don't want to really get too attached, too close to them. But she sits in here in the evening on her little yellow stool and hand feeds them. And this keeps the babies calm. She gets a kick out of them because they'll crawl up in her lap, they'll peck on her toes, they'll bite on jewelry. And people say, oh yeah, they're doing that because they're starved. She can feed them, pick the feed up, go back and sit in, and some of them will still come up and mess around.
And I believe that's the part of the motivation program of the Jones family.
I put that in your comments the other day, so I don't know if you've seen that yet, but I mean, sometimes she has more time to do that. Sometimes I have more time to do that. And Young Birds is her thing. I mean, Old Birds is a little different. Young Birds, she loves Young Birds, and it's a challenge because you never know who is going to be there.
Correct.
Which one's going to shine.
Yes. I like your statement that pigeons made you closer to each other, and that is one of the most important thing, and that's one of the most beautiful thing that I ever heard in regards with my interviews in regards with the pigeon fancy. If there's a new member and would like to get some guidance how to operate the clock, are you open for some guidance?
I have helped. In fact, one of our club members bought a benzene clock this year, and I actually left church because their race happened to be on a Sunday, and it was his first race with the benzene, and he was nervous about it, and so after church was over, I went over to his house and looked at it, and I said, everything looks right. Well, actually a bird came in while I was there, and I looked at his clock and said, that's what it's supposed to look like. And it just made him a little more at ease to know that, okay, it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. So I mean, I have helped people with clocks, when they ask it. I want people to be successful with their clocks and feel comfortable with their clocks.
Yes. Well, the pigeon racing is competitive, but the important thing is we help each other.
You have to, because especially around here, the majority of the pigeon flyers are getting, up in age, and it's getting less and less people. So if there is someone new, you need to encourage them and help them as much as you can to make sure that they, have a good, a positive experience, so that they don't get frustrated and throw their hands up in the air and say, I quit because I can't figure this out.
And that is the purpose of my YouTube channel, to promote the racing pigeon sport to the younger generation. And I even have a project for the military veterans to use the pigeons as their emotional support leash. And we believe that because you were a military brat, and also Joey, a military brat. We call it military brat when you were a child of,
Well, fortunately, both of us were not military brats because our parents were, our dads were out of the service by the time we were born.
Okay.
They both left the service after World War II, and we were both born after, they were back home again. But
at least the mere fact that they serve.
They serve, yeah. And I know in our household that, it was because maybe because he was in the military, it was a, kind of not that it was mean, but it was more of a strict family,
more perfectionist kind of thing. Yeah.
And that maybe have been just his my dad's personality, but I wouldn't doubt that military kind of had a little hand in that part of it.
So, well, there will be some viewers that are new in the sport and thinking to get involved into the sport, and some people reached out to me. That is why I decided to convince you to have this interview to share with us, being married to a guy who's so involved with the pigeon. They reached out to me and saying that, oh well, Romer, I am worried about my wife, how am I gonna convince her and whatnot. What is the important message that you could give to our viewers who are trying or thinking to get involved into this hobby and worried about they will not get the support that they need that you provided to Joe?
Not everybody is
has the same faith,
right? And not everybody has the interest in. But if there's any interest whatsoever, it is a sport where you can both be in it and both compete. And we've always, it's kind of like, oh darn, you beat me. we're all a very competitive family.
You're so into it. You caught the pigeon bug.
One thing I want to say, and I want to interrupt you, but when you said that, it hit me real hard, and I short-term memory, I'll forget it.
Yeah.
She was shipping with Austin, so when she wasn't with the grandkids, their first, she was going down there and she was scanning or taking her birds out of, they have it where you take your own birds out of the crate and hand them to someone and they scan them for you and put it on the trailer. And she was doing this, and several of the guys were saying, see, she does it, you can do it. That same day, two of the women got a bird out of the crate and took them over and scanned them for the first time ever.
Nice.
So he said, see, you can fly. You can fly too. And if they convince their wives, to be it, I mean, they're very supportive in Austin. A lot of the guys that show up, their wives come along.
Nice.
A lot. More than I've ever seen anywhere else. And I've heard stories about where the wives just could care less about the pigeons. They hate them. And they function fine. It's what it is of what it is.
It's just that important and also special if your spouse supports you, right?
Well, you were at one loft, Bob McKay. His wife is big and with the pigeons. I don't think she flies, but she's so very into it also. Supportive. Yeah. Norman Glennowinkle, his wife passed away last year, I believe, and Marianne was very supportive of it. She would come to functions with him, one loft races, auctions and stuff. And some were, but back in the day when Phyllis started, it was like, whoa, hardly any of the wives. Now my mom took care of my dad's birds when he was in the service. And I know a lot of the comments were made in the interviews that was after. He actually started, I've got where he was banding birds in 1936. So he flew before he got into the service. When he went in, my mom did everything. She shipped the birds, she banded the birds, she fed, she watered the birds. And if she had a problem, she called a club member about anything that, something.
To ask questions and everything. That is so nice.
One other thing, I guess this is kind of one of those to show how much pigeons have become a part of my life is that I'm actually allergic to them.
Wow.
And here in Texas when it's 100 and whatever degrees and I still go into the loft. I have to wear a mask
yeah.
to go into the loft to be able to breathe without getting sick. And so it's wintertime, it's
okay.
fine because it helps keep you warm. But in the summertime, when you're having to wear a mask in the loft, it really gets hot.
I like what Joey said. You just need to make it happen. You need to adjust and adapt.
Years ago, I don't know the exact day, Phyllis was training for me. I went to work, and she was involved in a very serious car wreck.
Wow.
That came within minutes of her dying.
Wow.
So the birds some didn't make it, some did, whatever. And she was in the hospital for a long time, and her dad and her mom helped feed and water the birds. But when it came out, I said, I'm getting rid of the pigeons.
Okay. And that was kind of tough.
And she said, no, you're not.
Nice.
It wasn't the pigeons' fault,
Yes.
They were a victim, like she was, getting hit, and they suffered. And she said, no, we're keeping them. So that's a trooper.
And that is a very important, situation.
A lot of the pigeon sport in this area know about that.
Right.
A lot of people called when they found out about it, and said, how is she doing? And, I hope she's fine. And,
I like what you said, that it's not the pigeon's fault.
No.
It's not the pigeon's fault. And you do not want to stop what you both love to do because of a challenge or the situation that could have resulted of stopping what you love to do.
Right.
And I am so humbled and thankful to have the great opportunity to meet the Jones family loft here in Canyon, Texas. And one thing, every time I conduct an interview like this, it reminds me of Mr. Vern Clausen said. You remember Mr. Vern Clausen, right? He told me that the enjoyment of the pigeon racing pigeon hobby starts at the backyard. And we are interviewing here at the backyard of Mr. Joey and Mrs. Phyllis Jones' law here in Canyon. Well, thank you so much. So much for the opportunity to share your story, the love story of Mr. Joey and Phyllis Jones. And again, they are open for guidance, assistance, if there's a new flyer that would like to be involved in this type of hobby or sport. Thank you for watching, and we hope to see you again in our next episodes of interviewing fanciers around the nation. This one can be released, right?
No.
No, not something that can be released.
Okay.
See, that's what I'm gonna do. That's why I asked her.